Hello, and welcome back to Sleepy Hollow Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into dark, chilling tales whispered from the mists of Sleepy Hollow, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1. 4, 6, 3, 3, 4, 2. I say the numbers out loud like a prayer, even though I don't believe in prayer anymore. My teeth chatter as I speak. I'm cold and hungry because the ground is cold, the fire isn't lit, and I haven't eaten yet. I turn and look at Elias in the half-light under the tarp. Rain ticks softly on the plastic above us, like someone tapping a fingernail over and over. "How are you feeling?" I ask him. "Okay," he says. "Why?" "Because I am." "No," I say, trying not to raise my voice. "Why are you feeling okay?" He thinks for a second, like he has to translate the question into a language he understands. Because we're sitting down now. The tarp's up. The rain isn't on me anymore. I relax my forehead without meaning to, like my face had been pulled tight all night. I put the dice back in my backpack and loop the straps around a peg that sticks up from the ground. Then I close the padlock. It clicks, sharp and clean. I shake it hard just to be sure. Locked. I've locked it. The key is in my back pocket. I can feel the shape of it when I shift my weight. We walk into the trees to find wood. The canopy above us is thick, almost solid. It makes the morning look like late evening. Everything smells like wet bark and old leaves. The ground is soft, dark, and full of little hidden dips. We collect what we can, snapping branches and dragging them back. When we finally get a fire going, the first warmth feels like a miracle. We heat tins of beans over the embers. We don't have proper bowls, so we cradle the tins in our hands and eat fast, spooning heat into our mouths as much as food. The beans taste like metal and salt, but they sit in my stomach like something heavy and real, and that matters. In the morning, I shake dew from a branch and break it at a joint. The wood bends and fights before it gives, sap stretching like sinew. I count 4 small twigs. Snap, 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 snap. I let the broken pieces drop where I stand, and I listen. There's always a sound in the woods, a quiet rustle, a movement you can't pin down. But I'm listening for something else too, something that rides along with the natural sounds, something that makes the back of my neck tighten. Elias pulls down the tarp while I study the map. Hammerton, Ripon, place names that used to mean normal things. Shops, petrol stations, people walking dogs. I take out a black marker and hold the dice in my other hand like they can anchor me. I roll snake eyes, then again, then a 4 and a 6. With wide strokes, I ink out the area under an old junction, like I'm erasing a bad dream. I crumple the map and stuff it back into my bag. We head north again, the way we always do. My breath hangs in the air, pale and thin. Elias walks a few feet behind me, watching his feet and limping slightly as he steps between roots. There's nothing to say that will help. There's nothing to say that won't make it worse. The woods thin out into open fields. The land looks like a patchwork quilt, gray-green and wet, fenced off in rectangles. We hop an enclosure and my backpack catches on brambles. I yank it free and a thorn bites my hand. I don't even look. There's no point. The ground is littered with shallow puddles where old tractor tires have torn it up, stagnant pools of silt and bog water. An oily rainbow film slides across the surface of some of them. We zigzag around, careful not to step in anything that might swallow a boot. Off to the east, there's a small hamlet. Smoke rises from chimneys. Lights glow in windows. It looks warm, normal. The kind of place where you could knock on a door and ask for help. The thought makes my stomach drop. I can picture it too clearly. I can see myself standing there with my cap in my hands, begging, and I can feel, like a cold finger pressed to the base of my skull, the certainty of what would happen if we went in. That picture fills my mind with a thick, sick dread. I keep walking. A few miles down the country road, I feel Elias slow us to a stop. I turn and see him drifting to a halt, head craned toward the field on our left. His whole body has changed. He's not just looking. He's leaning toward something, like the world is pulling him by the face. I follow his gaze. At first, it's just mist and distance, the usual rolling hills. Then I see it, miles out, wrapped in a hazy ring of fog. Something rising from the ground into the clouds, thick, entwined, splitting, and rejoining, like a tower made of roots, or a tree that decided to grow into the sky instead of out. I don't know what it is, but the moment I see it, my body reacts like I've been caught doing something wrong. It's huge, and it has presence, like it's leaning over the land. It looks into me without eyes. And the worst part is the feeling that comes with it, warm and bright in my gut, like relief, like happiness. It likes me, and it wants me to like it back. I swallow hard like I can put the feeling away with effort. I blink twice. Hey, Elias, I call. He's fully turned now, facing it. I see his posture, forward on the balls of his feet, mouth slightly open, fists clenched, like he's waiting for someone to tell him he can run. Mate, come on. I clap sharply. Elias startles as if I slapped him awake. He wobbles, catches himself, eyes darting to me. Oh yeah, he mutters, rubbing his ankle. My ankle's killing. I just needed a second. I grunt something that isn't kind, and we carry on. I catch myself looking back more than once, but when I do, the road behind us, it's quiet and normal, like the world is still sane. I can't stand the way Elias walks after that, half humming under his breath. The uneven clack of his boots on the road sounds childish, dumb, wrong in the empty countryside. It needles me. We spot a dirt track and follow it back into the woods. We set up camp as the light fades. Elias nails down the tarp while I reach for the key in my pocket. My fingers shake a little as I unlock the bag. I check the lock again. Then I open it, reach inside, and pull out the dice. 2 and 4, 3 and 2, double sixes. I am tired and worn, I say out loud, forcing the words to come because we walked a long way, and it's exhausting. I'm exhausted because we haven't stopped, and I want to sleep. The words are crude, almost stupid, but that's the point. Simple, true, safe. I put the dice away and lean back against my backpack, watching Elias work. He pauses between tasks like he's listening for instructions no one else can hear. Later, as the fire settles into embers, Elias shifts in his sleeping bag. He can't get comfortable. His eyes are open, reflecting little orange points of light. I just see it, he says quietly, in my mind. I get lost and I can't stop thinking about it. The tower. The one we saw today? Yes, it's just there. He swallows. And it's like I'm trying to remember it, but it keeps fading. Then don't remember it. But I can't help it. I sit up, suddenly wide awake, and lean forward on my hands. I stare at him hard. How do you feel? I ask. Funny. Something twists in me tight and sharp. Funny. Why? Because of that tower, he says. Because it's not normal. I hold very still, like moving too fast might crack something. How funny? What does it feel like? He breathes out and his voice speeds up, like he's afraid the words will vanish, like I need to see it again, like I need to go back and prove it's real. I want to get closer and see what it is, how tall it is, if I could climb it, and I hit him across the face. It's not a thoughtful choice. It's reflex. Elias's head jerks to the side, but he doesn't pull away the way someone usually does. He turns back slowly, blinking as if waking. He rubs his cheek. His jaw cracks once. He doesn't speak. How do you feel now? I ask. He stares at me, stunned, like some bastard punched me in the face. Okay, I say, and I can't stop a small, ugly smirk from slipping out. I settle back into my sleeping bag, but the anger in me keeps burning, and I can't let it go. Cold, I tell him. You feel cold, you feel tired and hungry and sick. That's it. You're not happy. You're not funny. If you are, then you're dead. Elias stares at me like he's trying to understand whether I'm warning him or threatening him. Maybe both. I pull my covers up to my neck and stare at the dark canopy above us until sleep takes me. Morning comes again, thin and gray. I brace a hand on a trunk and twist at a branch until it snaps free. The sound is wet, like tearing cloth. I stumble backwards with it and count the twigs. 6. Snap. 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 The last one won't break cleanly. I work it around until it separates with a slow, groaning tear. Then I let all the pieces drop. They hit the ground with a deafening crack. Not a normal crack. It's like thunder right next to my head. Like a gunshot in a small room. The sound doesn't just enter my ears. It shoves through my whole body. Pain blooms. My ears feel swollen, full of pressure. I clap my hands over them and scream without planning to. I drop to all fours, dizzy, and scramble toward the tent like something is chasing me. I fumble for my rucksack. My hands won't cooperate. I curse at the lock as if it's doing this on purpose. I finally get it open and yank out the dice. 1 and 3. I lie there panting, staring at the numbers like they might speak back. Elias runs in, breathless. Who is that? Is someone here? I cough, trying to make my throat work. No, we're alone. What the hell was that then? Was it a gun? It's nothing, I say too fast. It's not anything, really. I'm serious. How could that be nothing? What happened? I push myself upright. My skin feels wrong, like it's buzzing. I think we need to keep moving. Elias stares at me, exasperated. But he doesn't argue for long. We start packing in a hurry. My hands tremble as I yank guy wires out and fold the tarp. Elias lifts the rucksack and, without thinking, reaches for the dice. Don't you fucking touch that. He pauses, then almost automatically, like a bad habit, he scoops them up anyway. I smack them out of his hand. They bounce off wet leaves. I drop to the ground and scramble to grab them, rolling them again and again, my lips moving silently. Elias hovers over me. What are you doing? I stop long enough to breathe. I can't find any pattern, just numbers. Random, that's good. Random is safety. It's important, I say, ashamed of how I sound. I need these to see how far we are. It's random. It should be. He watches me like I'm an animal he doesn't recognize. I see myself through his eyes, hunched in the dirt with a toy in my hands, muttering. My face burns. He doesn't say anything, just grabs supplies and starts walking. I follow because there's nothing else to do. We climb out of the trees and back to the road. The sky is paler than yesterday, cloudless but faded like the color has been drained. In the far distance there are shapes on the horizon, hulking and wrong, dominating the landscape like ancient roots pushed up through the earth. They weren't there yesterday, or maybe they were and we just didn't see them. Maybe they've always been there and we've only just earned the right to notice. Elias keeps his eyes forward. I force myself to do the same, but even in my peripheral vision, they loom. It feels like they're holding up the sky. We hear the man long before we see him. At a crossroads, he stumbles into view, shrieking like his voice is the last living thing in him. He's shaking, knees bowed, hunched over. One hand clamps his stomach, but blood seeps through his fingers and drips onto the road. Behind him, a trail of red marks the stones. He looks cut open in ways that make no sense. Joints split, tendons exposed. Like someone tried to take him apart carefully to see how he worked, then changed their mind and left him half-assembled. He reaches us, but he's already gone, really. Elias wraps a thin blanket around him. We look at his broken limbs, his missing fingers, his torn skin. My eyes trace the road back toward a village, the place he probably came from. Warm windows, smoke, life. We leave him in a muddy ditch, breathing in wet, ragged pulls that won't last. Every few hours after that, we stop and do the routine. Check the map, Check the dice, check our feelings. I don't look back for long. I don't let myself, but the urge is there. A hunger to pause just a little longer, to roll the dice again and see what happens. Like it will answer something, like it will soothe me. And I know with a kind of clean terror that if I give in to that urge, I'll be satisfied. And I'll be dead, so we keep going. By sundown, we find something we've been looking for without ever saying it out loud. A patch of grass beside the road, faintly blue, just a few shades off from everything around it. Not bright, not glowing, just wrong enough that your eyes stick to it. Elias is the first to step toward it. His limp eases, his posture straightens. He kneels and brushes the blades with his palm like he's greeting an animal. Under his breath, he mutters a rhyme. The words are soft, almost lost under the wind, but they hook into my mind like an old melody. The refrain. I recognize it. I join in, quietly at first, then stronger. Something hot flares inside my chest, a need to raise my voice and be heard. The song feels ancient, alive, like it's been waiting for our mouths. Elias falls back onto the blue grass. His eyes are wide. His mouth hangs open like he's tasting something sweet. I walk closer, my chest heaving as the tune pours out of me. We're not singing it. It's singing through us. The ground trembles. Elias laughs, arms spread, fists clenched around the blue grass like he's trying to hold the earth itself. I suck in a breath and bellow the biggest part of the song. I scream. I've been screaming for a while. I only realize when my throat burns and my lungs are empty. Elias's scream changes into a wail. The ground under him collapses. A pit opens like the earth is unzipping. A tunnel, dark and wet, expanding fast. I lunge and grab his right leg. I pull with everything I have. Elias is kicking, sliding, screaming. The tunnel below is cavernous, dripping. It doesn't just sit there. It calls. It wants. For a split second, the urge hits me again, strong and sweet. Let go. Let him fall. Let yourself fall. To be taken is to be free. I clamp down on the thought like it's a snake and I drag. Elias's hands claw at the grass, his nails tear. I get him out and he curls into himself and vomits until there's nothing left. He wipes his mouth, tastes bile and blood, and shudders away from the pit. We stagger back to the road and run until our legs feel like they'll snap. That night, setting up camp, my mind keeps slipping. I try to remember the song and can't. It's like it never existed, like we never knew it. But for that moment we did, and I loved it, and I wanted it. Elias sits by the fire, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring into the flames like he's punishing himself. I approach carefully, like he might lash out. "How are you feeling?" I ask. He doesn't look at me. "Go fuck yourself." When I wake the next morning, the weakness hits me right away, a heavy hand in my chest. We've been rationing for days. Now we're down to scraps. My legs shake when I stand. Elias sleeps by the cold fire, blanket around him, his face dirty with soot. He looks peaceful in a way that scares me. I don't wake him. And then Richard notices wild berries. Not Elias. Not me. Richard. Richard suggests we forage deeper in the woods where the best berries grow. Like we've done it 100 times. Like this is normal. We leave Elias to rest and Richard leads me into the trees. He holds my hand, firm but gentle. We pass bushes heavy with berries, but we don't stop. Somehow we both know we're going deeper. The best ones are always deeper. My ankle twists on a root and pain shoots up my leg. I stumble. Richard looks at me with a kind of bright compassion that makes my skin crawl. He helps me up and guides me forward. His grip is warm, too warm. "We can't stop now," he says softly, and the words feel like they've been placed into his mouth by something else. The rest of the group are waiting. Group? What group? I feel watched from the trees, a pressure in the air, like an audience holding its breath. My pain throbs dull and steady as we walk. My leg gives out again and I collapse to the ground. Richard doesn't let go. He keeps pulling and it drags me off balance. I look up and realize we're in a clearing. Along the tree line, shapes stand half hidden. People. They don't move like people, though. They don't blink. They don't fidget. They just watch. My arm aches from Richard's constant tugging. I try to pull away, but he's too strong. I pull back with both hands, and he doesn't shift an inch, like his feet are nailed into the earth. I look at Richard. I look at the others. I look back at Richard. He's smiling at me with love and forgiveness, and it makes me feel sick. With his free hand, he holds something up, letting the sunlight catch droplets of water on its shiny skin. A single cherry, larger than any I've ever seen, heavy on the stem. Perfect. Too perfect. Like it's been made, not grown. The trees rustle. The watchers step forward. They're naked. No, they're clothed, in thick coats and jeans and scarves, like they're dressed for cold moorland wind. No, they're not clothed. It's flesh. Twisted masses shaped into the idea of clothing, carved with textures like wool and denim, fused to their bodies as a second skin. A copy of something human, a mockery of it. They slide into the light, arms hanging, hands turned the wrong way, faces blank with longing. Richard still holds my hand. The cherry hangs between us. He breathes out like he's satisfied. "What do you want?" I ask. He sighs and tilts his head, smiling wider, as if I've said something adorable. "What do you want?" I ask again, louder. Nothing. No answer. Just that soft clicking sound the others make, like teeth tapping or nails on glass. I turn in a circle and realize I'm surrounded. "What is it?" I demand, voice shaking. "Why do we have to keep moving? What are we running from? If I go back, what happens? What's chasing us?" Richard finally speaks, and his voice is calm. Heaven. I recognize him then in a flash like a camera bulb. The man at the crossroads, the one we left bleeding in the ditch. But now he's restored, clean, beautiful, like suffering never touched him. He steps closer and places the cherry into my palm like it's an offering. They all wait, perfectly still, hungry with anticipation. I open my fingers and let the cherry fall into the grass. Then, forcing my body to move with calm I don't feel, I turn away from Richard and walk straight through the ring of watchers. None of them grabs me. None of them stops me. I walk out of the clearing toward our camp, toward Elias. Behind me, I glance once. They're frozen in place. And then, slowly, they begin to sink into the ground, like figures being lowered through a trapdoor. Something in my mind lifts, like a curtain rising, and suddenly I can think again. And when I can think, the horror hits full force. I start crying, then screaming, then running. I crash through brush and branches, ankles screaming with every step. I see the tarp ahead like a dirty flag. Elias is where I left him, curled on his side. I trip over him as I lunge for my backpack. He jolts awake, confused, and I'm already tearing at the padlock. My hands are useless. I rip the zipper off the bag. I pry the teeth apart with my fingers until they split. The dice spill onto wet leaves. I slam the map onto the ground and grab my marker. Thirsk, Breckenbro, a 19. My eyes flick to the dice. Double sixes. I roll again. Double sixes. Again. Double sixes. Again and again. Each time the same. I start scribbling out huge sections of the map, blacking them out like I can erase the world. Double sixes. Double sixes. Double sixes. My temple throbs. I grab the map with both hands and tear the bottom third clean off, like tearing skin. My mind tries to do the math and fails. The odds stack up into something impossible. My chest jerks, sucking air. I'm hunched over the map and dice like a man praying over scraps. A shadow falls over me. Hands slide over my shoulders. Elias hugs me from behind, tight, like he's anchoring me to the ground. "How are you feeling?" he asks. I try to speak and it comes out broken. I'm weak and I'm scared. Because I don't know, because I see but it's not real, because... "No," he says, voice rough but steady. "You dumbass. How are you? A sob crawls out of me. I fold down toward my knees, and for a second I feel like I might melt into the dirt. Elias shifts around in front of me, sits, wraps an arm over my shoulder. His warmth is thin but real. We're fucked, I whisper. Of course we're fucked, he says. We've been fucked since it started. I can't do anything, I say, words spilling now. We're lost. I test and I check, and I'm careful, and I do what I can, but it just takes me. I can't do it, and then I'm happy, and then I realize, and I'm fucked. I lift my head. Elias looks at me like he's weighing my soul in his hands. Mate, he says quietly, look at me. I'm happy, I'm cold, I'm tired, I'm starving, but I'm happy. My blood goes cold, that word again. He holds my gaze. No, I'm not sick. I'm not insane. I'm happy because I'm alive right now. I roll the dice once more. Nothing changes, just numbers. We set off again because that's what we do. I still check. I still snap twigs and roll and ask and listen. But it feels like the world is laughing at the whole routine. The hills shift between greens and blues like bruises. The sky bleeds a deep crimson, and above it all, those black, branching shapes mass like tendrils. Sometimes I swear I can hear singing in the wind, soft at first, then stronger when we slow down. Like the land itself is humming. The ground looks swollen in places, porous, like it's breathing. It beckons. The thought creeps in again. To be consumed is to be free. I slap myself hard, and the crack of my fingers stings. The raw pain is a relief. It keeps me here. Elias trudges forward under his rucksack, smaller than he used to be, fragile with hunger. I offer to stop. He doesn't answer. The idea of danger behind us and safety ahead used to keep us moving, like a rope tied around our ribs, pulling us north. Now the horror isn't behind us. It's everywhere. It sprawls across the landscape and into our heads. It makes the idea of salvation feel childish. At some point, I find myself standing at a door, a real door, brass handle, cold under my fingers, a house at the edge of the road. I don't remember walking up to it. That scares me more than anything. I lift my hand to knock and then stop. I look around. Elias is still walking a few yards ahead, like he doesn't even know I've paused. We're on the road. My mouth tastes like metal. Footsteps inside, carpet shuffling, a pause. I stare down at the iced concrete under my shoes. Where am I? The footsteps stop. I slam my fist against the paint, impatient, too hard. Elias turns to look at me. I double over and vomit onto the ground. Elias drops his pack and runs back. But he's weak, too, and he stumbles. The door unlatches. The next moment, I'm over the threshold, not guided, not invited, just pulled, like the house has suction. I don't see a host. I don't hear a voice welcoming me. Elias grabs my arm and tries to haul me upright, but I can't stand. My legs fold. The towers outside feel closer, drifting toward us across the hills, even though they don't move like things should. My face hits mud, then tarmac, then carpet, like the world can't decide what it is. I find myself in a hallway lined with framed photos. Families, smiling faces, holidays, babies, warm kitchens. Every photo looks real and loving. But no face repeats. Different families, every frame, like a museum of parenthood. And summer evenings, curated by something that doesn't understand why those things matter, only that they do. Elias rolls me slightly so I'm not face down in rainwater pooling near the doorstep. He hauls me up. My vision swims. Are you okay? He asks. The air inside is still and warm. I drift into a living room. A hearth crackles. A piano sits in the corner like it's waiting to be played. Books on tables. Toys scattered on a rug. Steam rising from mugs of tea, fresh and hot. For a split second, it's so normal, I almost sob. I lean against the doorway, letting the warmth wash over my face. Elias's voice comes from behind me. Small. God, what happened? I don't answer. I can't. The chandelier above us hangs motionless. It isn't a chandelier. A man is suspended from the ceiling, smiling with his eyes closed, as if dreaming. His body is cut into pieces, separated into sections that float in the air. Deep red sinew connects the pieces, webbing the room like ropes. Little morsels of flesh hover above the furniture, filling empty space. And the furniture isn't furniture, not really. Faces are stretched over the upholstery. Skin swallows cupboards. The walls pulse faintly. Comfort made out of meat. Eyes are everywhere, looking at me with longing so intense it feels like need. I step in anyway. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I already did. The road snaps back into place like a rubber band. I'm outside again, forcing my eyes to focus. My blood pounds in my ears so loud it drowns out everything else. Elias is gone. For one awful second, I think the house took him. Then I hear him, far off beyond hedgerows, stumbling into a field, singing. I shout his name, but the words crumble in my throat. The tune rises in my own chest, trying to climb out. I clamp my hands over my ears and scream, begging him to stop. He keeps walking. The ground ahead of him trembles and begins to open. Then I'm spun around by a sharp blow to my face. Another punch slams into my chest, knocking air out of me. Elias grabs my hair and hauls me up. He hits me again, then tackles me to the ground. I hear singing, loud and triumphant, but it's not coming from the Elias on top of me. It's coming from a distance, from the pits and fields, like the air itself is praising something. I look past the Elias choking me and see another Elias, far away, running and singing, descending into the pit. My mind splits. My reality doubles. I can't keep it straight. The Elias above me grips my throat, pressing his weight down until the world narrows to a thin tunnel. How are you feeling? He asks, calm as anything. He reaches to his back pocket, pulls out something, a razor. He smashes it on the ground, snaps the plastic, draws out the blade. Blood slicks across the concrete. How are you feeling? He asks again. I claw at his hand, but he's heavy, relentless. He slices at my face and my mouth fills with spit and copper. The song swells and swallows the countryside with a righteous fury that makes my eyes water. How are you feeling? He's running toward me, and he isn't running toward me. He's singing, and he's choking me. He's killing me. The world can't decide what it is. How are you feeling? Then, suddenly, he stops. The singing cuts off like someone closed a door. His grip loosens. We lock eyes. Contempt, hatred, fear, recognition. Something rises in me, hot and bright, and I can't fight it anymore. I start laughing. It erupts out of me like vomit. Violent and unstoppable Elias convulses too, laughter tearing through him. We gasp for breath between bursts, faces inches apart, laughing like we've seen the funniest thing in the universe. We laugh until our ribs ache. We laugh until it hurts to inhale. We laugh until the sound stops being ours and becomes part of the landscape. We do not sleep for 10 days. And when we finally do, we are laughing. We are the happiest we've ever been. There is a man running toward a cabin. His arms pump. His pace is steady. He will reach it. And when he does, he will get inside and find us and tear us apart. I slam bolts into place. I drag a table against the door. Elias and I scramble up the stairs. The attic ladder drops down and we climb, nails and splinters biting into our skin. The air is thick with dust. The floorboards up here feel thin, like they could give way under our weight. I jam a fire extinguisher into the hinge of the attic door to keep it sealed. My trousers sag with the weight of a gun. Then the scene slides, like a film skipping frames. I walk into an office through a side door, the only one left open. People sit at desks under a wall of north-facing windows. Sunlight pours in, bright and clean. Typewriters clack. Files are stacked in towers. No one looks up at first. Lydia glances at me, then returns to her work, like I'm late for a meeting. I reach for my waistband. Aim, click, fire. Screams rip through the room. Two people freeze, brains slow to catch up. I fire again, then again. Girls run for the exit and shove at the door, but it won't open. I stumble between chairs until they're in range. They drop at the door, now barricaded from the inside. Someone tries to tackle me and I smash him with the gun barrel. I press the muzzle to his head. The gravity of power turns. I stride forward with purpose that doesn't feel like mine. Then it shifts again. I'm at my desk at home, glasses on, reading reports. My wife calls from the kitchen. Her voice is familiar, tired, normal. It's 9 o'clock. Coming, I say. I take off my glasses and pinch the bridge of my nose. I go downstairs. Where are they? I ask. In bed, she says. It's late. The little one's finishing her reading for school tomorrow. Jacob and Jonathan are having their last half hour of screen time. Okay. Will you go and say goodnight to them? Of course. She gives me a small kiss. She sits on the sofa pulling off washing gloves. I already said goodnight while you were working, she adds. Can you take their phones while you're up there? I think they've had enough. I walk up the stairs. In the attic, Elias and I huddle in the far corner, as far from the door as we can get, like distance can save us. We cling to each other, trembling. Every few minutes I drop down to check the cabin. Door locked, barricaded. Windows smashed but too small to climb through. I line the sills with glass shards anyway, like traps for a monster that doesn't care about glass. We broke the attic ladder and threw the pieces up here with us. Each time I climb, using only my arms, it gets harder. I'm weaker every time. Richard places a cherry in my hand. Back in the office, the first shot echoes. Screams burst like fireworks. I steady my aim and fire again. Bodies crumple. The exit won't open. The door bows but holds. People pound at it, begging to be let out, and I move toward them like I'm meant to. Upstairs in my house, my daughter sits in bed holding a book. She looks up at me. What you reading, sweetie? I ask. The Road. The Road? I try to smile. Isn't that a bit old for you? It's for GCSE, she says. My English teacher wants us to read the first 30 pages for tomorrow. Right. I nod slowly. Bit heavy before bed, eh? A bit. I stand at the doorway like I'm afraid to step in. What's it about? I ask, though I already feel like I know. It's a dad and his son walking through the end of the world, she says. Everything's dead and they're trying to get somewhere warmer so they survive. Sounds interesting, I say. I might read it again when you're done. It's a school copy, she says, and she smiles a little. I laugh softly, but it doesn't reach my stomach. How long are you going to be up for? I'm nearly done. Okay, don't stay up too late, and turn the little lights off. Okay. I turn to leave. Dad? She says. Yes? In the cabin, the man pounds at the door. He shrieks and laughs and curses our names and curses every god he can think of, old and new. The door buckles. Wood cracks. We hold each other tight, trying to treasure the last seconds of love before it's ripped away. He will get in, and then he's in. I roll the dice and it explodes into impossible contradiction, like the universe can't decide what the numbers are. My daughter gestures to the book. Does the story have a happy ending? You said you read it, she says, and it's depressing, and I feel like they're both going to die. It's got a good ending, I say. It's kind of happy. Do they get where they want to go? Why don't you just read it? The words come out sharper than I mean. She shrugs. I sigh. Yes, it's happy. Not like a big, cheerful grin kind of happy. Happy in the way that works, quote. If they die and don't get what they want, she says, then what is the point? In the office, a man whimpers with his arms out, begging. I don't hear him. I reload. I press the barrel gently to his temple. His eyes are bright blue. His face is wet with sweat and snot. This isn't sport anymore. It's execution. In the cabin, the screaming comes from inside now. He smashes furniture in rage. He doesn't know where we are, but he knows we're here. He stops and looks up, and I see something else, something too big for the mind to hold. A tomb beneath the earth, a labyrinth of jagged rock, a prisoner that has been there since before people could name the sky. Endless heat at the core of the world. Darkness, an ancient name carved into thought, too old to read. Tendrils spreading through soil and stone, reaching for the surface. The towers. Not towers, limbs, roots, vines of obsidian unfurling into the clouds. Elias laughs. I laugh, reality laughs with us, like it's all an inside joke. I roll a cherry in my palm. There is no dice. Something judges us. It judges everything. Anger, lust, hate, warmth. It lays it all out like a tapestry and decides what we are worth. This is its role. Not to chase us, not to hunt us like an animal, but to weigh us, to offer us something we can't refuse. I turn back and my daughter is frozen on her bed. I feel cold metal in my hand. My knuckles crack. Through the attic hatch, a head rises. The man's eyes lock on us with careful, patient menace. My colleague's screams echo through the cabin walls. My family huddles in the corner. My daughter shrinks back. I step toward her, then I step toward the man. I don't know which one is real. I don't know which choice is mine. I tremble in front of him, my throat tight with a prayer I don't believe in. The dice rolls a 4, and I embrace them all. After that, Elias is gone. I don't know where he went or when. The road under me feels soft and warm, like a bed. I could stay here. I could lie down and let the world pass over me. But I stand. I walk because that's what I'm supposed to do. I feel tired. I feel weak. I feel like I might die, and that's okay. I don't need to be okay. I leave my backpack behind. My belongings don't matter. The dice don't matter. The map doesn't matter. They were never controlling anything. They were only ever giving me something to hold while the world changed shape around me. I feel content. I feel still. And I feel happy now because I am happy because I am. I keep walking because I have been saved. Story 2. Grandpa had a long list of rules, and he said them the same way every time I visited, like he was reading them off an invisible card only he could see. Don't ask questions unless you're looking right at the person you're talking to. Don't talk to yourself, and don't talk to stuffed animals either. Don't eat or drink anything when you're alone. When I was little, I thought he was just strict in a weird way. Some adults have habits, and Grandpa had more than most. He didn't say his rules like suggestions either. He said them like warnings, like there was a real consequence waiting behind each one, ready to snap shut. Of course, I broke them sometimes, not because I wanted to, but because I was a kid. Kids talk to toys. Kids mumble to themselves when they're thinking. Kids ask questions the second they have them, without planning where their eyes are pointed. The first time I forgot and asked something while I was looking at my hands, Grandpa came at me like I'd pulled a fire alarm. He rushed in from the hallway, voice raised, face tight, and he shouted back at me as if I'd called his name. "What did you say?" he barked. "What did you just say to me?" I remember blinking up at him, confused, because I hadn't been talking to him. I'd been talking to myself. I'd been trying to remember if I left my jacket in the car, but he didn't care. Or maybe he cared too much. He kept talking over me, acting like it was obvious I'd been addressing him. He glanced around the room while he did it, quick little looks toward the corners and the doorway, like he was checking to see if anyone else had noticed, like he was scared something had heard me. Then he would calm down just as suddenly. He'd clear his throat, straighten his shirt, and tell me the rules again in a voice that tried to sound normal. He'd make me repeat them back. If my dad was there, Dad would give me a look like, "Please, just do it. Don't push. Don't upset him." Dad said Grandpa had PTSD from his time in the Army. The way Dad explained it, Grandpa had been through things most people couldn't even imagine. He'd served overseas, mostly in Uganda, in thick jungle heat, where everything was green and wet and alive. where you had to listen for the smallest sound because it could mean danger. Dad said Grandpa had been part of missions that involved freeing hostages and fighting rebels. He'd seen violence up close. He'd lost friends. I believed Dad. It made sense that someone who lived through that might come home with strange habits. It made sense that you might learn to be quiet, to be careful, to not draw attention. Even the eye contact thing kind of made sense if you were trained to watch people and read them. But the part that didn't fit was Grandpa's yelling. If he wanted silence, why did he raise his voice like that? Why did he make more noise than anyone else? As I got older, the rules started to feel less like harmless quirks and more like the structure of his whole life. He didn't just repeat them when I visited. He lived by them constantly. He moved through his house like he was trying not to disturb the air. When the phone rang, he stared at it for a second before answering like he had to decide if it was safe. He didn't let the TV run in the background. If there was music, it was low. If I laughed too loudly, he smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes and asked me to keep it down. It took years before I dared to ask him what the rules were really for. I didn't ask because I thought it was funny. I asked because I was old enough to see that he wasn't just eccentric. He was frightened. Constantly. We were in his living room. The place always smelled like old paper and wood polish, with a hint of something herbal and bitter that I couldn't name. Everything was neat, but not in a warm way. More like the neatness of someone who doesn't want things to move. I chose my moment carefully. I sat across from him and waited until his hands stopped shaking around his coffee mug. "Grandpa," I said, making sure I was looking right at him, "why are the rules so important?" His eyes went past me instead, and I felt that familiar feeling like the room had gotten colder without the thermostat changing. Then he raised a finger, slow, and pointed to the thing I hated most in his home. It sat on a shelf like it belonged in a museum display. A clear bottle of spirits about the size of a wine bottle, filled with pale liquid. Suspended inside was a large green lizard. It was bigger than any lizard I'd seen outside of a zoo. Its mouth was slightly open. Its eyes were shut, or maybe they were just pale and dead-looking. Its body looked too real to be fake and too still to be alive. Grandpa called it a souvenir from Uganda. When I was younger, I told myself it was like those scorpions people put in paperweights. Just grosser, but something about it always made my skin prickle. I never liked turning my back to it. Grandpa leaned forward until his face was close to mine, and when he spoke, he didn't just lower his voice. He turned it into a whisper, like he was trying to keep the sound from traveling. "It might hear us," he said. I stared at him. My mouth went dry. He kept whispering, eyes wide now, fixed not on me, but on the bottle. "Never talk to it. Never. Promise me." His fingers dug into my wrist hard enough to hurt. "Promise." I promised, because the fear in his voice didn't sound like an old man remembering war. It sounded like someone standing in front of an open door trying to keep something from coming through. After that, I stopped breaking the rules. I treated them like they were real because Grandpa clearly did. When I stayed over, I made sure I didn't mutter under my breath. If I needed to ask something, I made sure I had the person's eyes. If I was hungry, I waited until someone else was in the room with me, even if it meant sitting there hungry for a while. I told myself it was respect. I told myself it was the easiest way to keep him calm. But the bottle didn't let me forget about it. Grandpa did strange things with it. Sometimes I'd come into the living room and notice the lizard's scales moving inside the glass, swirling around in the liquid as if someone had shaken the bottle hard. Like those snow globes you turn upside down. Except it wasn't snow, it was something like tiny flecks of skin, or bits of green dust spinning in slow circles. Whenever I saw it, Grandpa would already be watching me. He'd clear his throat and step between me and the shelf, blocking my view like it was accidental. "Don't stare at it," he'd say, calm but sharp. "Just follow the rules." The question lived in my throat for years. What is it? Why is it here? Why keep it if it scares you? But I never asked. I figured the answer was just trauma. I figured Grandpa had brought home something awful, and it had become a symbol to him, a reminder, a mistake, something he didn't know how to get rid of. And then he died. It was quiet news, the kind that lands softly but changes everything. He wasn't young, and he'd been fading for a while, but the day he was gone still felt wrong, like a room where the furniture has been moved and you keep reaching for things that aren't there anymore. In the days after the funeral, Dad asked me to go to Grandpa's house and handle something Grandpa had left instructions for. Dad didn't want to do it himself. He said he couldn't. The way he said it made me realize this wasn't just about grief. It was about dread. Grandpa's last request was simple on paper and impossible in my chest. I was supposed to burn the lizard bottle in a fire. Not the kitchen stove, not a little campfire on the patio, but a real blazing fire. Along with some herbs Grandpa had prepared in a small cloth bag, tied shut with string. Grandpa had kept the bag in a drawer, like medicine, like a final step in a ritual no one else understood. His last words, the ones Dad repeated to me with a pained expression, were stuck in my mind as I drove over there. Never talk to the lizard, burn it. Remember the rules, promise me, promise me. I kept seeing Dad's face, too. The tightness around his eyes, the way he looked embarrassed and sad at the same time, like he'd spent his whole life trying to explain his father away to other people. It must have been hard watching your own dad become someone who lived by secret rules, someone who flinched at ordinary sounds, someone who was always listening to a threat no one else could hear. I tried to tell myself that was all it was. Delusion, PTSD, an old soldier's mind getting stuck in the past. But standing alone in Grandpa's house, I couldn't quite make myself believe that the house felt smaller without him, like it had been built around his habits. The air was stale, heavy with dust and old fabric. Every floorboard creaked in a way that sounded too loud. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. I walked into the living room and saw the bottle right away. It was still on the shelf, exactly where it always was, the glass dulled by a thin coat of dust. The lizard inside was perfectly still, frozen in that half-open mouth expression. It looked like it had been interrupted. I stood there for a moment, just breathing, gathering nerve. It was ridiculous to be scared of a bottle, I told myself. It was a dead reptile in alcohol. It was gross, but it was just an object. Still, when I reached for it, my hand hesitated. The bottle was warmer than I expected. Not room temperature, but warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight. And it was heavier, too. Not heavy in a normal glass and liquid way. Heavy like it wanted to stay where it was, like it had weight beyond what physics should allow. I lifted it carefully and held it up to the light. The liquid looked clear, but there was a faint haze around the lizard, as if the space near its body was slightly blurred. I turned the bottle slowly, watching how the light moved through it. The lizard didn't move at all, not even a gentle drift, the way something suspended in fluid usually would. I gave it a small shake, just once, like someone trying to see if a snow globe still works. Nothing happened. The scales didn't swirl. The tiny flecks stayed pressed at the bottom as if glued there. The lizard stayed still. A part of me relaxed. See, I thought, it's just a bottle. Grandpa was afraid of a memory. Then the front door squeaked. The sound cut through the house like a knife through cloth. I froze, bottle in my hands, heart jumping into my throat. "Hello?" I yelled, turning toward the entryway. The door squeaked again, slow and complaining, like someone was pushing it open an inch at a time. "Hello? Who's there?" My voice sounded too loud in the quiet. No one answered. I stood there for a second, listening. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear breathing, just the soft rustle of leaves outside and the far-off creak of the house, settling. Finally, I exhaled, annoyed at myself. The wind, I decided. Old door, old hinges. I set the bottle down on the living room table and walked to the entryway. The door was partly open, moving slightly as the breeze pressed against it. The hinges groaned softly. I let out a small laugh, shook my head, and pulled it shut. When I turned back toward the living room, the laugh died in my mouth. Inside the bottle, the scales were swirling. Not drifting, not slowly settling. Swirling like something had stirred the liquid from inside. The flecks spun around the lizard in a tight spiral, like a miniature storm trapped in glass. I stepped closer without meaning to. The bottle was still on the table where I left it. No one had touched it. I picked it up again. It was warmer now, enough that my palm felt uncomfortable, like I'd held it too long next to a heater. The glass almost seemed to pulse with heat, and something else was different. I couldn't name it at first, but it made the hair on my arms lift. The lizard's position had changed. It was only a little, just a slight shift in the angle of its head, a fraction more turned toward the side, like it was no longer resting in a random pose, but choosing where to face. I swallowed hard and forced myself to look away. I remembered Grandpa's voice, the raw fear in it. Never talked to it, I carried the bottle to the front door again, planning to go outside. Grandpa had a small fireplace at the far end of the overgrown garden, a stone thing he used sometimes in the fall. That was where Grandpa had said to burn it, not inside, outside, under open air, where smoke could rise and whatever happened could get away from the house. I stopped on the threshold, bottle heavy in my hands, and squinted toward the garden. The yard looked neglected, the way it always did when Grandpa was alive, but worse now. The grass was too tall. The bushes had gotten wild. Rotten apples lay under a tree near the fence line, dark spots on pale fruit, and I could hear wasps buzzing somewhere in that mess. But it wasn't the wasps that made my stomach tighten. It was the feeling that stepping out of the house was a mistake. The trees rustled softly in the wind. The sound should have been calming. Instead, it felt like whispering. My throat went dry so fast I could taste it, that cottony panic taste that comes when your body decides something is wrong before your mind can explain why. I stood there too long, staring at the stone fireplace in the distance. It suddenly seemed very far away, like it was on the other side of a field instead of a backyard. I imagined walking out there alone, carrying the bottle, hearing the glass clink, feeling it warm against my skin, and I felt exposed. Like the moment I crossed the doorway, something would be able to see me clearly. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself grief was messing with my nerves. I told myself I was getting spooked by a bottle and an old house and my own imagination. Still, I didn't step outside. Instead, I turned back in, set the bottle down, and decided I'd do it another way. The kitchen had a stove. I could make a strong fire in it, burn the herbs, burn the bottle's contents. Maybe the glass would crack, and that would be the end of it. Maybe I could open windows and let the smell out. I moved like I was trying not to wake someone sleeping. In the kitchen, I lit the stove and watched the flame come to life. It was a steady, ordinary blue at first, and I felt a weak relief. Fire was simple. Fire didn't care about fear. Fire would just do what it always does. Then the dread crawled back in, slow and cold. I pictured the bottle exploding, shards of hot glass flying. I pictured the alcohol catching, flames leaping up. I pictured smoke filling the house with a smell so rotten it would cling to everything forever. My mind created images faster than I could stop them, each one more vivid than the last. No, I thought. This is a bad idea. Grandpa said blazing fire, not a stove. Grandpa said outside. I gave an uneasy little laugh, trying to break the tension, and realized my mouth felt unbearably dry. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth when I swallowed. Water. I needed water just to steady myself. I walked to the sink, grabbed a glass, and filled it. The sound of running water felt strangely loud. I drank the first glass in one gulp and set it down. My body didn't feel satisfied, not even a little. It was like the dryness was deeper than my throat, so I poured another. Drank it just as fast. Then another. Then another. By the time I reached for a fifth glass, my hand froze in midair. Grandpa's rule hit me so hard it felt physical. Don't eat or drink anything alone. My heart started beating faster, and I turned slowly, staring at the empty kitchen. The house was still. No one else was there. No one had been there the entire time. I had just broken one of the rules, and I'd done it without thinking. My stomach twisted, not from the water, but from a sudden hunger so sharp it made me dizzy. It didn't feel like normal hunger. It felt like my body was an empty room, and something had just opened the door and stepped in. My hands shook as I tried to breathe. My thoughts scattered, and then one thought rose to the top, clear as a scream. Food. Now. I stumbled to the pantry like I was being pulled. I opened cupboards too hard, making dishes rattle. I didn't even care about the noise. My hungry eyes landed on a can of beans, and it looked like the best thing I'd ever seen. I grabbed it and didn't bother searching for a can opener. I found a knife, wedged it under the lid, and pried. Metal screeched. I didn't stop. My hands moved with a desperate strength that didn't feel like mine. When the lid finally gave way, I didn't even get a spoon. I tipped the can and gulped down the beans straight out of it, cold and slippery, some of the sauce spilling down my chin and onto my shirt. Halfway through, an icy wave ran up my spine and left me lightheaded, as if the air had suddenly thinned. The house felt different, quieter but not empty. The silence wasn't waiting anymore. It was listening. I stood there with the can in my hand, breathing hard, beans sitting heavy in my stomach, and I realized what I'd done beyond eating alone. I had spoken out loud when I yelled at the door. I had asked questions when I called out, "Who's there?" I had talked without seeing anyone's eyes. I'd broken the first rule, then the third, and I couldn't even remember if I'd muttered to myself at some point too. I probably had. People do when they're nervous. Every rule. Broken. My skin prickled with the feeling that someone was behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't want to. Turning would make it real. A small sound came from the living room, so soft I might have imagined it. A faint clink, like glass touched lightly by a fingernail. The bottle. I could picture it on the table, warmer than it should be, scales turning like a storm. I could picture the lizard's head, angled just a little more toward the doorways, toward the hall, toward wherever I was. Something about the rules suddenly made sense in the worst way. Grandpa wasn't trying to keep himself calm. He wasn't trying to control my manners. He was trying to keep something from noticing me. And I had just made sure it noticed. The hunger inside me faded as quickly as it came, leaving behind a hollow sickness. My tongue felt thick. My throat hurt like I'd been shouting for hours. I took one step back from the counter, and my heel bumped something. I looked down. Nothing was there. But the bump had been real. The pressure against my foot had been real, like I'd stepped into the edge of a shadow that had weight. My breath caught. I forced myself to move, to walk, to not stand still like prey. I left the can on the counter and went toward the living room, because the idea of the bottle being in the other room without me watching it felt worse than being near it. As I entered the living room, the air felt warmer, thick, and close, like the room had been sealed. The bottle sat on the table where I'd left it, but the dust on the glass was gone now, wiped clean in places as if something had rubbed against it. The scales inside weren't just swirling. They were rising, gathering around the lizard's head and shoulders like a living cloud. I took another step and stopped. The lizard's eyes were open. They weren't normal eyes. They were pale and reflective, like pieces of wet glass. They didn't blink, but they tracked. They locked onto me with a kind of focus that made my stomach drop. My lips parted before I could stop them, a small sound forming, maybe a name, maybe a question. I clamped my mouth shut and backed away, holding my breath, remembering Grandpa's whisper. Never talk to it. The bottle gave a quiet clink again, and I saw it shift on the table. Just a tiny movement, like it had been nudged from the inside. I knew then that I had to leave. And I knew something else at the same time, a truth that settled into my bones like cold water. I couldn't leave without the bottle, without the lizard, without whatever had been listening so patiently for me to forget Grandpa's rules. because it wasn't trapped in the glass the way I'd assumed. The glass was the only thing keeping it from being free. And now that I'd broken every rule, it didn't seem interested in waiting much longer. Story 3, I didn't do it, but no one believes me. All the evidence points to me, and the way I tried to explain it didn't survive in court. If you hear the whole thing, you'll understand why I sound insane when I say, I'm innocent. Looking back, it didn't start the night everything fell apart. It started months before, in smaller ways I didn't understand at the time. I stopped sleeping properly. I'd lie in bed and feel this pressure in my chest, like something heavy was sitting there. During the day, I'd get sudden waves of anxiety for no reason. Nothing was wrong on paper. I had work, friends, a normal life, but I kept feeling like something bad was coming, something I couldn't see yet. I don't know if I believe in seeing the future, but I do know what it's like to sense trouble before it arrives. It was like walking around with a hood over my head, hearing footsteps close by, knowing something was behind me but not being able to turn fast enough to catch it. Then I had the accident. It was late and I was driving home through the countryside after visiting a friend. We'd spent the evening playing a tabletop horror game, the kind where you tell stories and pretend the world is full of old gods and monsters. It's funny thinking about that now. At the time, it felt like harmless fun. Now it feels like I tempted something by even sitting at that table. I had a shoulder injury from a football game earlier in the spring. I'd been taking codeine off and on for the pain, and that night I might have taken more than I should have. Or maybe I was just tired. Maybe I wasn't focused on the road the way you have to be on those dark rural stretches where there are no streetlights and every junction looks the same. I can't tell you exactly what I did wrong because the memory is blurred at the edges, like an old video that keeps skipping. What I can tell you is this. I came up to a T-junction with no lighting at all, and the moment I entered it, a car slammed into the driver's side of my vehicle. The impact felt unreal, like the ground itself had shifted. Glass exploded from the side window and sprayed into the car. Metal folded and crunched like it was made of paper. For a second, the sound was so loud I couldn't hear anything else, and then it stopped so suddenly it felt like someone had cut a scream in half. The air filled with the sharp stink of petrol and oil, and for some reason that still makes no sense to me. The driver's airbag didn't deploy. I sat there for a moment trying to breathe. That strange calm you get after a shock settled over me. I moved my hands, then my legs, just checking that everything still worked. I was mostly okay, shaken and sore, but not broken. Then I looked to my right. The other driver was halfway out of his own windshield, sprawled over the hood of his car. His eyes were wide open, but empty. Blood ran down from his head and soaked into his beard, thick and dark. He looked like a person who had been turned off. I forced myself to get out. My door was dented, but it opened. My legs were trembling so hard I felt like I might fall. I stepped toward him and tried to find any sign of life, any movement, any breath, anything. There was nothing, no pulse, no rise and fall of the chest. His eyes didn't blink. He was dead. I had never seen a dead body in real life. It didn't feel real at first. He had that stiff, wrong look, like a mannequin tossed into a position it wasn't meant to hold. One arm was twisted in a way a living body would never allow. I almost could have convinced myself it was fake if it weren't for the smell of blood and the awful sticky shine of it in the dim light. You're probably thinking the court case was about who caused the crash. You're probably thinking I pulled out when I shouldn't have, and I got charged for dangerous driving, manslaughter, something like that. No, the crash didn't put me in court. The crash was just the door that opened. It was everything after it that ruined my life. When I accepted that the man was dead, I pulled out my phone and tried to call emergency services. No signal. I moved a few steps, tried again. Nothing. Out there in the empty countryside, my phone was just a dead piece of plastic. Panic started rising. I looked around for houses or lights. There were none. Just open land and darkness. and one crooked tree standing near the junction like it had been planted there to watch the road. Beyond it were rolling fields that looked like black shapes piled on each other. In that state, you don't think clearly. I could have tried my GPS, tried to figure out where I was, tried to walk until I found help. But I was in shock, and the only thing I wanted was to get away from that body and that smell and that silence. I needed other people. I needed the world to come back and make this real again. Police, ambulance, anyone. That was when I saw the suitcase. It had been thrown from the other car and landed on the road. Dark green, old-looking, with a brass lock that had snapped open just slightly. The opening was small, but it was enough to show a dark gap inside. I didn't decide to walk toward it in a logical way. I felt pulled toward it, like when you know you shouldn't look at something, but you can't stop yourself. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone standing nearby. Another driver slowing down. A farmer coming out of the fields. Even the dead man's ghost leaning against that twisted tree, watching me. But the road stayed empty. The night stayed quiet. I think that's when you learn what you're really like. Not when people are watching you, but when no one is there to judge you. I crouched down and flipped the suitcase open. Inside was cash. Stacks and stacks of it. More money than I'd ever held in my life. It didn't look like someone's vacation fund. It looked like serious money. Hundreds of thousands, at least. People say money is power, but it's not that simple. Money doesn't just give you options. It changes your brain in an instant. It creates new thoughts you didn't know you could have. It makes you think about what you deserve, what you could fix, what you could escape. I felt it happening to me right there on that road, like something sliding into place. I looked around again. Still nobody. I checked the man again, as if maybe he could suddenly wake up and stop me. I'm not a doctor, but he seemed completely gone. No breath, no pulse. His eyes stayed open and blank. With no signal and no help coming, I took the suitcase and put it in the trunk of my car. I told myself I wasn't stealing it. I told myself I was protecting it, that I'd turn it in when I could, or at least keep it from being taken by someone else. A smarter person would have heard that voice and recognized it for what it was, an excuse. A neat little lie wrapped around something ugly. My car was badly damaged. The right side was crushed in above the wheel. A headlight was smashed. The windshield and driver's window were broken. Part of my rear license plate had torn off. But when I got behind the wheel and carefully pressed the accelerator, the car moved. It made a rough, grinding sound, but it moved. So I drove away, shaking, desperate to find a town, a person, a normal place with lights and faces. As I drove, the wrong choice started to settle into me. That's another thing nobody tells you. Doing the wrong thing doesn't always feel like a dramatic moment. Sometimes it feels like a small step, and then another. And then suddenly you're farther from yourself than you thought possible. A voice in my head kept whispering, "Take it. He's dead anyway. You don't even know what kind of man he was. That money could be dirty if it is. You might as well put it to good use. Pay your bills, help your family, build a life." By the time I reached the nearest town and walked into the police station, my hands had stopped shaking enough for me to speak. A heavy-set officer at the front desk listened while I explained there had been a crash out on the road and that the other driver was dead. He wrote it down, calm and careful. He asked a few questions. How did it happen? Where exactly was it? What did the other car look like? And I answered him, but I left out the suitcase. I left out the money. That omission felt like swallowing a stone. The officer called for an ambulance and more units to check the area. Then he said he'd need me to show them where the accident happened. I agreed. I thought I was doing the right thing by reporting it, even though I hadn't told the whole truth. I was trying to balance two realities at once. The reality where I was a decent person who called the police, and the reality where I'd stuffed a dead man's money into my trunk. When we got back to the T-junction, my stomach dropped. There was nothing there. No wrecked car, no body, no shattered glass sparkling in the road, no twisted metal, nothing that matched what had just happened. The place looked almost normal, like any other empty rural junction. The crooked tree was still there, watching. The officer looked at me with a slow, doubtful expression, like he was trying to decide whether I was drunk, high, or playing some kind of sick joke. "You sure it was here?" he asked. I stared at the road, unable to make sense of it. All I could say was, "I don't understand." We stepped out and walked around. The air was still. The night noises felt muted. The officer pointed out 2 dark patches on the asphalt. He crouched, touched one, and then sniffed his fingers. "Petrol," he said. "It could be from the other car," I replied quickly. He didn't look convinced. He walked to the tree and ran his hand along the trunk. There was a fresh gouge in the wood, like something had hit it recently. "Maybe you hit the tree," he said. "Maybe you were alone, and you clipped it." "I didn't hit the tree," I insisted. "The other car must have knocked into it. It happened fast." He sighed like he'd already made up his mind. Then he said something that still haunts me. He told me either I'd crashed into a ghost, or the other driver had survived, climbed back into his vehicle, and driven away. He said they'd keep an eye out for a green car because that's how I described it. I could almost see a smile forming on his face, like the whole thing was a waste of time. He told me they'd contact me if they found anything else. By the time a tow truck brought me back home, I felt like I was trapped inside a nightmare that didn't follow normal rules. My car was towed away for repairs, and I stood outside my house in the early hours, trying to breathe and understand what I'd seen. Then I remembered the trunk. I told the tow truck driver I needed to grab something first. He shrugged, and I opened the trunk. The suitcase was there. So the crash had happened. The money was real. But the body and the other car were gone. Someone had returned to the scene after I left and cleaned it up. Who does that? Who can remove a wrecked car and a dead man in the middle of nowhere in the time it takes for me to drive to town and come back with a police officer? I tried to force an explanation. Drug money, organized crime, people who could make problems disappear. It all sounded like a movie, but I didn't have anything better. I knew I couldn't keep the suitcase in my home. If the police came asking questions and found it, I'd be finished. So I decided to hide it somewhere, close, somewhere forgotten. There was a piece of waste ground not far from my house, an abandoned lot that had once held a garage and some old lockups. Now it was broken concrete, weeds, piles of rubble, bushes, and cracked tarmac. No one went there unless they had a reason. It was quiet, unpleasant, and ignored. That was exactly what I wanted. I carried the suitcase there, walked through the broken gates, and went toward the back where the bushes were thick and the rubble was piled high. I wrapped the suitcase in trash bags and slid it under rocks until it disappeared. When I stepped back, it looked like nothing had changed. I told myself it was safe there until I could think. Then I went home and tried to sleep. I didn't. I lay awake listening for my doorbell, for footsteps outside, for anything. But no one came. When morning arrived, I sat with coffee and stared at the wall while my mind ran in circles. I couldn't deposit that much cash in my bank account. It would raise questions fast. So I decided I needed a slow, believable way to bring small amounts of it into my finances. I'm not proud of this part, but I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. I came up with a plan to clean the money by making it look like earnings. After I got my car back from the mechanic, I signed up for a local weekend market, the kind where people sell used stuff out of the trunk of their car. I figured I could claim I made a few thousand a month selling old items, and then deposit that amount bit by bit. If anyone asked why I had things to sell, I'd say I'd inherited clutter over the years from older relatives. That part was true. I had boxes of junk and sentimental items I didn't need. Each Tuesday, I'd leave work early, go to the waste ground, pull back the rocks, open the suitcase, count out around 1,000 pounds, and put it in my pocket. Then I'd deposit it and act like everything was normal. For about 2 months, it worked. Every weekend, I stood behind my little stall, pretending to care about old lamps and dusty books, selling small items to people who loved bargains. The strange part was that even though I was using it as cover, I still actually made real money from the junk, too. People will buy almost anything if it's cheap enough. I started to feel safe. Not happy, just safe. Then I saw him. I was at the market handing an old lamp to an elderly woman when I looked up. The sun was low and the crowd was backlit, so faces were hard to make out. But at the far end of the lot, I saw a man standing still, staring directly at me. Even from a distance, something about him felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. He had a red beard, and the shape of his face hit me like a punch. I knew that face. I'd seen it lying dead across the hood of a car. I'd seen those features in my nightmares since the crash. The old woman asked me the price again, and I answered without thinking. My hands felt numb. When I looked back, the man was gone. All day I tried to tell myself it was a mistake. It was just someone who looked similar. My guilt was making connections where none existed. That was the reasonable answer. But the reasonable answer died the following Tuesday. I went to the waste ground like always. The place felt quiet, but there was a strange pressure in the air, the same sense I'd had at the market, like eyes on me. I pulled away the rocks and opened the suitcase. I counted out 1,000 pounds, pocketed it, and covered the money again. When I turned around, he was there. He stood at the entrance between the old wire gates, wearing a black hoodie with the hood up. His hands were in his pockets. A small breeze lifted the edge of his hood. He didn't move. He just watched me, like I was something he owned. We stared at each other for too long. My mouth went dry. He slowly pulled back the hood, and the last bit of denial fell apart inside my head. It was him. The same red beard, the same face, the same eyes that had been open and dead on that road. I noticed something in his pocket, something metallic, catching a dull bit of light. Fear wasn't the only thing I felt. I felt disgust, not at him exactly, but at what he was. At the fact that he was standing upright when I knew he should not be. Like reality itself had been bent. He started walking toward me, fast. I didn't think. I ran. I pushed through bushes and weeds, tearing my arms, stumbling over broken concrete and hidden debris. The greenery felt like it was grabbing at me, slowing me down. I saw an old chain-link fence ahead, tall and rusted. I climbed it, the metal biting into my palms. When I swung my leg over, my foot caught, and I fell hard on the other side. Something sharp in the undergrowth slammed into my ribs, and pain shot up my side. But I got up and kept running. When I finally reached a street with old buildings and lights, I turned around, expecting to see him right behind me. There was no one, no footsteps, no figure, just empty night air and my own shaking breath. On the walk home, I tried to convince myself I'd hallucinated. Maybe guilt was poisoning my mind. Maybe I was cracking under stress. But the bruise on my side was real. The pain in my hands was real. And the look in that man's eyes had felt real in the deepest way. I stopped sleeping properly after that. I'd wake up sweating, half sure I'd heard something in the house. I'd dream of those wide, dead eyes watching me from corners, from doorways, from crowds. I kept trying to talk myself out of it during the day because the alternative was too insane to accept. By the weekend, I forced myself back to the market, telling myself if I could get through a normal day, I'd feel normal again. I watched the crowd the whole time, scanning faces, waiting to see that beard, that stare. But nothing happened. Then Tuesday came again, and I went back to the waste ground. The suitcase was still there. The money was untouched. I took another 1,000, hid the rest, and left quickly. That gave me false confidence. I started to believe maybe the danger had passed. Maybe my fear had peaked and faded. Then Friday night came. A friend from school was visiting, and we went out drinking. It felt good to laugh. It felt good to talk about dumb childhood memories and forget for a few hours that I was living with a suitcase of stolen cash and the memory of a dead man's face. I got home after midnight, Half drunk and heavy with exhaustion, I locked up, took some water and ibuprofen, and fell into bed. At 3:18 a.m., I woke up. Someone was knocking on my front door. At first, I thought I'd imagined it, but then it came again. 3 clear, heavy knocks. My heart started racing so hard it made me feel sick. Nobody knocks on your door at that time with good intentions. I didn't go downstairs right away. I went to my bedroom window instead and pulled the curtain back a small amount. A man stood at my front door. He wore a dark denim jacket with a black hood pulled up. I couldn't see his face from that angle. Then, in my tired panic, I bumped a vase on the windowsill. It tapped against the glass. The sound was small, but in the silence of the night, it might as well have been a gunshot. The man snapped his head up and looked straight at me. We locked eyes. I knew those eyes. Lifeless, wide, unblinking. The same eyes from the crash, the same eyes from the waste ground. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of metal. Even from upstairs, I recognized it. It was the corner of my rear license plate, the piece that had torn off in the crash. My stomach dropped. That meant he didn't just know where I lived. He knew it was me. He knew what I had done, and he wanted what I took. He turned slightly and started scraping the license plate shard against my front door, over and over, carving into the wood with a slow, steady sound that made my skin crawl. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, but my mind froze. What was I going to say? That a dead man was outside my house demanding money? That I'd taken the money from the crash and hidden it? Even if the police came, I'd still be ruined. I made a choice I will regret for as long as I live. I decided to talk to him. I went downstairs, grabbed a kitchen knife, and approached the door. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely hold it. "What do you want?" I called out. The scraping stopped. For a moment, there was silence so thick it felt like the air was holding its breath. Then there was a heavy thud against the door. "I want my money," a rough voice said, cold and flat. "I know you took it." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, even though my voice gave me away. "Don't lie," he said. "You stole it. You hid it somewhere. Give it back, and I'll go. And if I don't, then you'll be dead too." Something clattered onto the ground outside, like he'd dropped something without caring what it was. "I'll be back tomorrow night," he said. "If you don't have it, I'll cut your eyes out." Then he walked away, his footsteps fading into the dark like he belonged there. I slid down the wall and had a panic attack right there in my hallway. I couldn't breathe properly for nearly an hour. When I finally calmed down, the only clear thought I had was this: I was done. Whatever that money was, whatever it had brought into my life, it wasn't worth dying for. I would give it back. I just hoped he wouldn't notice I had already taken a few thousand from it. In the morning, I went to the waste ground as soon as I could. The sky was gray, my mouth tasted like fear, and I kept looking over my shoulder. When I reached the hiding spot, my heart sank. The rocks had been thrown aside. The trash bags were torn. The suitcase was gone. All the cash was gone. I stood there staring at the empty hole in the weeds and rubble, feeling like I was going to vomit. The suitcase had been the only thing that could save me, and now it was gone. Whoever took it had left me with nothing but the money I'd already deposited into my bank. I went home and stared at my house like it was a trap. Night was coming. He'd be back. What was I going to tell him? I tried to think through options. Running crossed my mind, but it felt pointless. You can't outrun someone who doesn't play by normal rules. You can't hide from something that already found you. The only thing I could do was offer him everything I had access to. A few £1,000, mostly from what I'd already taken. I rushed to the bank and tried to withdraw it all. The manager told me there would be a 3-day wait for that amount. I lost control and shouted, "It's my money." He stayed calm and said they didn't allow sudden large withdrawals without a good reason. It was part of anti-money laundering rules. The words hit me like a joke from the universe. I couldn't explain why I needed it without admitting what I'd done. They let me withdraw $2,000. That was it. I took it and left, shaking with rage and fear. I went back home and waited at the kitchen table while daylight drained away. Around 8:30 p.m., the knocking started. 3 loud knocks, slow and heavy, like someone hammering nails into a coffin. I stood up and walked to the door, holding the knife again, though I knew it wouldn't help. I opened it a crack, and cold air pushed in, colder than it should have been for that season. He stood there, close enough that I could see every detail. The red beard, the pale face, the eyes that looked like they were staring from somewhere far away. Not drunk, not high, not mistaken. It was him. "Have you got my money?" he asked. "I don't know where it is," I said. My voice sounded small, like it belonged to someone else. "Someone took it. I thought it was you." "I'm sorry, I have 2,000 here, and I can get more in 3 days, but that's everything I have." "What do you mean you don't have it?" His voice sharpened. "There was over $500,000 in that suitcase." "I hid it," I said, and my shame burned in my throat. "Someone must have found it." He pulled back his hood, and I saw his expression clearly. It wasn't just anger. It was rage mixed with something else, something almost like grief. And it was aimed directly at me. Then he lunged. He shoved the door open with a force I couldn't match. It slammed into me and knocked me backward. The knife slipped from my hand and skittered away into the shadows of the hallway. My head hit the carpet hard enough to make lights flash behind my eyes. He dropped down on top of me, his face close, his breath cold. "Where's the money?" he demanded. "I don't have it," I yelled. He started punching me, over and over. I tasted blood. I felt a tooth break and another crack, and a sharp piece cut the inside of my mouth. I choked and coughed, spitting blood onto the floor. He didn't slow down. He looked like he would keep hitting until I stopped moving. Somehow, I shoved him off me. Pure panic, pure survival. I scrambled away on hands and knees, blood dripping from my mouth. "Get back here," he shouted. He came after me, fast, blocking the hallway like a wall. I ran toward my spare room because it was the only place I could think of. I had heavy exercise equipment in there. Maybe I could barricade the door. Maybe I could buy time. I didn't have a better plan. I slammed into the room and reached for the door. I wasn't fast enough. He hit me on the back of the head. I stumbled forward, arms flailing. My hands grabbed the first thing they found on a shelf, a dumbbell. I turned and swung with everything I had left. The dumbbell connected with his head above the right eye. There was a sound I will never forget, like a hard shell breaking. He made a thick, wet, choking noise and staggered. His remaining eye stared at me in disbelief, like even he couldn't understand what had happened. He tried to speak, but it came out as broken sounds. Then he collapsed onto the floor. He didn't move. If this had been a normal man, I could have stopped there. I should have stopped there. But nothing about him had been normal. I had seen him dead once already. I had seen reality bend around him. And in that moment, my mind locked onto one terrifying idea. If I don't make sure, he will get up. So I lifted the dumbbell and brought it down again and again and again. I don't know how long it lasted. Minutes, maybe. Long enough that my arms burned and my stomach turned. Long enough that his head stopped looking like a head at all. Blood and something clear ran out onto the floor, mixing together in a way I didn't want to name. When I finally stopped, I stood there shaking, staring at what I'd done, and the room felt too small for the air inside it. My face hurt. My mouth was destroyed. My hands were sticky with blood, and on the floor was a body no one would understand. I knew, in that moment, that my life was over if anyone saw this. There was no explanation that would make sense. Not the money, not the crash, not the fact that he had come back, not the fact that I kept hitting him after he went down. A quiet thought slid into my mind, smooth and practical, like it had been waiting. Get rid of him. I started thinking in steps. How to move the body, how to clean the blood, where to take him, how to do it without neighbors seeing. It shocked me how calm that planning part of my brain became, as if my fear had flipped into a different setting. I closed the front door as if that simple action could seal the night away. Then I went to the bathroom, showered, and tried to patch up my face with a first aid kit. I bagged my bloodied clothes and dressed in clean ones. I thought about plastic wrapping and bleach, the things you see in movies. I thought about an old quarry entrance in the countryside that my uncle had mentioned years ago, a place that opened into darkness and water, a place where you could throw something down and never see it again. I even considered burning the body first. I wasn't thinking like myself anymore. I was thinking like a cornered animal. I grabbed my keys and opened the front door to go buy supplies. 2 police officers stood on my doorstep. My brain stopped. There was no time to build a story. No time to hide anything. One of them looked past me and saw the blood on the floor where I'd been beaten earlier. A neighbor saw someone force their way into your house, one officer said. Are you okay? What happened? I tried to speak, but nothing came out right. They must have seen it in my face. The delay, the panic. They exchanged a look, then stepped past me. They found the body. After that, everything moved quickly. Handcuffs, neighbors staring from windows, my own front lawn under the lights of a police car, the cold humiliation of being walked out like I was some kind of monster. In court, the argument came down to self-defense. If I had hit him once, if I had stopped when he went down, maybe things would have been different. But I didn't stop, and the condition of his head made it impossible to convince a jury that I wasn't acting out of rage or cruelty. I pleaded not guilty. My lawyer told me it was a bad idea, but I couldn't bring myself to say I was guilty of murder when, in my heart, I believed I was fighting for my life against something that shouldn't exist. None of that mattered. I've been in prison for years now. I likely have another 10 to go. I've had plenty of time to go over every detail until my mind feels worn down to the bone. As far as I know, the money was never found. I still don't know who took it from the waste ground. Maybe it was a random person who got curious and ended up with the luckiest find of their life. Or maybe it was someone who had been watching me from the beginning. Someone connected to that suitcase. Someone patient enough to wait until I led them right to it. Either way, the result is the same. The money vanished, and I stayed. The strangest part, the part that keeps me awake more than anything else, is that nobody has ever come forward to identify the man I killed in my spare room. No family, no friends, no missing person report matched him. His DNA and fingerprints weren't in the system. The authorities kept his body in storage for a long time, waiting for someone to claim him, but no one did. Eventually, he'll be cremated, like a person who never existed. I lie on my bunk at night staring at the ceiling and wondering who he was. If I could put a name to that face, maybe I could learn what really happened on that road. Maybe I could prove I wasn't crazy. I've tried to accept that maybe he didn't die in the crash. Maybe he survived, crawled away, got help, and came after me. But the injuries were horrific. The way he lay there, the emptiness in him, the stillness of his body, it didn't look like survival. It looked final. So I keep circling back to only 2 explanations. Either he had a twin, and I met the wrong brother on the wrong night, or I killed the same man twice. And if it's the second one, then I can't stop thinking about the question nobody else will ask. If he came back once, what's to stop him from coming back again? Story 4. I'm writing this from room 17 of a cheap motel about 15 minutes from the building. It's 4:17 in the morning. The neon sign outside keeps flashing pink through the thin curtains, and my hands already look wrong on the keyboard. I can't tell how much longer I'll even be able to type. I left everything behind in that apartment. Clothes, charger, the small box with my mom's ashes. All of it. I didn't pack. I didn't think. I just ran. 3 weeks ago, my mother died from cancer. Near the end, she barely looked like herself. Her skin had that waxy hospital light to it. Her lips always dry. Her eyes too bright from the medication. When I sat beside her bed, she held my wrist like she was afraid I would disappear if she let go. Her grip was weak, but it was steady. She made me promise something I didn't understand. She said I could do whatever I needed to do in her apartment after she was gone. I could sell things, throw things away, empty drawers, donate clothes. She didn't care about that anymore. But she said there was one rule, and she made me repeat it back to her because she didn't trust herself to hear it right. Never open the little door at the end of the hallway. That's exactly how she said it. Not that closet or the storage room. The little door, like it had a name. I promised because it was easier than arguing with a dying woman. I thought it was the pain meds talking. I'm 34. I fix old computers for a living. I spend my days pulling dust out of fans and replacing cracked laptop hinges and explaining to people that their passwords don't count as hacked if they wrote them on a sticky note. I don't believe in haunted doors. I don't believe in evil buildings. I believe in bad wiring and mold and rats and people making stories out of grief. I took a week off work. I drove up north, and I let myself into her fourth-floor unit with the spare key she always kept under the mat. The building was exactly what I remembered. One of those ugly 5-story concrete blocks from the 70s, the kind of place that looks like it was poured out of a mold and forgotten. The hallways were long and gray. The walls were thin. You could always hear somebody walking upstairs or flushing toilets, but you almost never saw anyone. The lighting was a sickly yellow, and the carpet had that flattened stain looked like it had absorbed decades of cigarettes and spilled soup. Half the apartments were empty now. The mailboxes in the lobby had names crossed out with black marker. A few doors had those cheap for-rent papers taped up inside the peephole window. It felt like a building slowly being abandoned, like a ship losing passengers one by one. When I opened my mom's door, the smell hit me right away. Damp and old food, like a fridge had died and nobody noticed. It was familiar in the worst way. The air felt stale, like it didn't circulate anymore. I stood there with my hand still on the doorknob and tried to prepare myself for the fact that she wasn't there, that the apartment was just an apartment now, that the place didn't belong to her anymore and didn't belong to me either. The first 3 days were mostly just sad, the normal kind of sad, the kind you can explain to people without sounding crazy. I packed up her clothes and put them in bags. They still smelled like those violet candies she always sucked on in her old cigarettes. That smell alone made my throat close up. I found half-empty wine glasses on the counter, like she'd had the energy to pour a drink, but not the energy to finish it. There were piles of unopened mail, coupons, hospital bills, and those charity letters with return address labels in them. I found a photo of me and my little brother stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a lemon. In every photo, I was smiling. In every photo, he wasn't. That wasn't something I remembered until I saw it laid out like evidence. There was a birthday picture where I'm grinning with cake on my face, and my brother is staring at the camera like someone just told him a secret. There was a Christmas picture with us in matching sweaters. I looked happy. He looked tired. There were a few school pictures of me and then a few of him, and even as a kid, he had eyes that looked older than they should have. I kept seeing that closed white door at the end of the hallway. It was in the same spot it had always been, past the bathroom and the small linen closet, right before the hallway ended at the bedroom door. I'd never given it much thought when I was younger. It was just there, and it was always shut. The paint was peeling at the bottom now, and the door looked a little swollen, like it had taken on moisture over the years. Every time I walked by, I noticed it. Every time, I told myself I wouldn't touch it. On the fourth night, I opened it. I don't even know why I did it. That's the part that keeps looping in my head. There was no reason. It wasn't like I was searching for documents or hidden jewelry. I wasn't looking for a will. I didn't even believe there would be anything interesting behind it. I was just exhausted, and I'd had 2 beers, and the whole apartment felt wrong in that quiet way it feels after someone dies. Like the air is waiting for something to happen, the door was stuck. I had to put my shoulder against it and shove. The wood groaned like it didn't want to move. When it finally gave, it opened only a little at first, like something heavy was behind it. I pushed again, harder, and it swung inward with a soft scrape. Behind it was a tiny narrow room, maybe 6 feet by 3. There was nothing inside. No shelves, no boxes, just stained carpet and a window that had been bricked up years ago. I could see the outline where the window used to be, but now it was sealed with uneven bricks and old mortar. Then the smell hit me. It was sweet and rotten at the same time, like melted violet candy mixed with blood. The air in that little room felt warmer than the rest of the apartment, and not in a normal, no ventilation way. More like the warmth of something living. The carpet looked darker in there, and when I stepped forward in my socks, it felt warm under my feet, almost body temperature. I backed out so fast, I bumped my elbow on the hallway wall. I closed the door and just stood there, breathing too hard, telling myself it was nothing. Mold, rot, old insulation. Maybe an animal had died in the wall years ago and the smell had been trapped. Maybe the warmth was just my imagination. I went to bed anyway because I didn't know what else to do. I lay in the dark listening to the building settle, the usual little cracks and pops. At some point, I fell asleep. That night, I woke up at 3:11, fully awake in the way you are when your body thinks you're in danger. My eyes snapped open, and I was convinced someone was standing there watching me sleep. The room was dark, but it didn't feel empty. My skin had that tight, prickling feeling like you get when you're being stared at. The whole building was quiet except for this slow breathing sound coming through the walls. In and out. Steady. Calm. It matched my breathing perfectly. When I inhaled, it inhaled. When I exhaled, it exhaled. I thought that couldn't be true, so I tested it. I held my breath. Everything stopped. No breathing in the walls. No gentle rise and fall. Just silence so deep it made my ears ring. When I started breathing again, the walls answered. I didn't sleep after that. I kept a lamp on and stared at the ceiling until dawn, trying to talk myself down. People hear weird things in buildings. Pipes, old vents, someone else's TV, a neighbor breathing too loudly. But I knew what I heard, and worse, I knew it had listened to me. On day 5, the little red truck showed up. It was sitting in the middle of the living room floor like someone had placed it there carefully. A small plastic truck, red with black wheels, scuffed along the sides. One wheel had a bite mark in it. I knew that because my brother had chewed it when he was little. It wasn't possible. I threw it away myself the week after he died. I remember the trash bag. I remember the weight of it in my hand when I carried it out. I remember standing at the curb the morning the garbage truck came, watching the men in bright vests toss the bags into the back like they were nothing. I remember thinking, in that numb and ugly way, that the world didn't even slow down for kids who didn't get to grow up. But there it was. Same scratches, same bite mark, same tiny smear of something dark in a seam that I never managed to clean out. I stood over it for a long time, waiting for the shock to turn into an explanation. It didn't. I picked it up with 2 fingers, like it might be dirty, like it might be infected. It felt warmer than it should have. Not hot, just not room temperature. I put it in a box with other things I didn't want to deal with yet, and taped the top shut. The next morning, the box was still taped. The truck was back on the floor, in the exact center of the living room, like the room had arranged it as a centerpiece. That's when I started to lose the ability to pretend it was nothing. I recorded a video on my phone, just to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. I held the camera on the truck and talked out loud like I was narrating a stupid experiment. My hands were shaking so badly the picture came out blurry, and my voice sounded thin and fake. When I replayed it later, I could hear something behind me. Not a voice, not footsteps. Breathing, slow and even, like the building had leaned closer to listen. By day 7, my veins turned dark. At first, I thought it was just the lighting. The apartment was dim and the hallway bulbs always flickered. But it wasn't that. The veins in my arms weren't just visible. They were raised like thick black roots under the skin, branching and twisting in a way veins aren't supposed to twist. They looked like they were pressing up from underneath, like something was trying to map itself out through my body. The veins on my neck did it too. When I looked in the mirror, I could see dark lines creeping up from my collarbones, like ink spreading under paper. Every time I thought about my brother, really thought about him, not just the vague memory of him, but the day he died, those veins throbbed. Not like a pulse, like something tugging at them from the inside. The apartment was boiling hot, but I wore long sleeves anyway. I didn't want anyone to see. Not that anyone came by. I barely saw people in the hallway at all. Still, I didn't want to see myself either. The carpet in the hallway felt different under my feet. Thicker, softer. When I walked barefoot, my feet sank in a little, and when I lifted them, there was a wet, sucking sound, like the carpet didn't want to let go. That should have been the moment I left. I know that now. But grief does strange things to your sense of what's normal, and stubbornness does the rest. I kept telling myself I just needed to finish packing. I needed to clean out the apartment, return the key, handle the paperwork. I needed to be an adult about it. I needed to stop acting like a scared kid in a hallway. Then the hallway started getting longer. It happened slowly enough that I tried to talk myself out of it. I started counting my steps the way you do when you're trying to prove something to yourself. 15 steps from the front door to the kitchen on day 6. I remember because I did it twice to be sure, walking heel to toe like it mattered. On day 8, it was 21. I measured again, taking normal strides, not trying to cheat the number. 21. I stood there in the middle of the hall with my heart beating hard enough to make my ears thump, staring down toward that little white door at the end. It seemed farther away, like it had moved back when I wasn't looking. The narrow room behind the forbidden door had changed too. I don't know why I checked it again. Curiosity is an ugly thing. Or maybe it wasn't curiosity. Maybe something in me wanted to see if it was still there, if I had imagined the warmth and smell. Maybe I wanted to prove myself right about being rational. When I forced the door open, the little room looked the same at first. Same stained carpet, same bricked-up window outline, same sweet rotten smell that stuck to the back of my tongue. But on the far wall, there was another door now. It hadn't been there before. I would have seen it. The room was too small to miss a door. The new door was plain, unpainted, like raw wood that had been sanded down. The doorknob was cold when I touched it. I stood there for a full minute with my hand on the knob, listening. I expected breathing. I expected something to scratch. I expected my phone to buzz with some warning, like my body could send me an alert. Nothing happened. So I opened it. On the other side was the exact same hallway I was standing in, except it stretched out much farther than the building should allow. Same flickering lights, same ugly carpet, same gray walls, but it just kept going and going and going, like the hallway had been copied and pasted until it forgot where it was supposed to end. I didn't step into it. I couldn't. The air on the other side felt heavier, like walking into a room where someone has been crying for hours. It tasted stale and sweet at the same time. And somewhere far down that endless hallway, I thought I heard something small shifting its weight, like a child trying to stand still. I closed the door and stumbled back into my mom's hallway, and I locked the little white door even though I knew that wouldn't matter. After that, my thoughts started slipping. I began talking to myself in a higher voice without realizing it. Not on purpose. It just happened. Simple kid sentences came out of my mouth, phrases I hadn't said since I was 9. You're not supposed to push. It was an accident. I would catch myself and freeze, my throat tight, my mouth still shaped around the words. One time I heard myself say it while I was standing in the kitchen holding a knife I'd been using to cut tape off a box. The words came out like they belonged to someone else. The sound of my own voice made me feel sick. I set the knife down carefully like I didn't trust my hands. I went to the bathroom and slapped myself hard enough to make my nose bleed, like pain could reset me. I stared at the blood in the sink and waited for reality to settle back into place. It didn't. On day 9, my nails grew back thicker and faster than I could cut them. I'd trimmed them down, and by the next morning, they were longer again, Not sharp the way nails get when you forget to cut them, but thick, yellowish, hard, like they were becoming something else. I scratched the wall without thinking as I walked down the hallway. My hand brushed the paint and left marks. When I looked back, there were faint handprints in the wall at the exact height my brother used to be. That broke something in me. Not in a dramatic movie way. More like the slow snap of an old rubber band that's been stretched too many times. In the bathroom mirror, my left eye blinked half a second after the right one. The delay was small, but it was wrong in the way a glitch is wrong. Like my face had lost sync. I leaned closer until my breath fogged the glass. I smiled at myself to test it. I watched the corners of my mouth pull up. I wasn't smiling. My cheeks lifted like a grin, but my eyes stayed flat. The expression on my face didn't match what I was trying to do. It looked like the kind of smile you see on someone who's pretending they're fine while they're thinking about something terrible. Day 10 was when the bumps started. Hard little lumps under the skin on my stomach and thighs, like teeth growing in the wrong places. At first I thought they were swollen lymph nodes or some weird reaction, or a rash. But they weren't soft. They were solid. I could pinch the skin around them and feel something shaped underneath, rounded and firm. When I pressed them, something moved. Not like fluid, like a small object shifting position, like it was deciding where it wanted to be. I threw up in the bathtub until I was dry heaving, my body trying to get rid of something it didn't understand. The whole time, the air in the bathroom smelled faintly of violet candy. Not from the apartment, from me, like the scent was coming through my pores. The building was changing with me. That's what I couldn't admit out loud, but it was happening. The apartment felt less like a place and more like an extension of something. Like the walls had nerves. Like the carpet had memory. On day 11, I tried to leave. I didn't even pack. I just grabbed my keys and my wallet and headed for the door with the kind of panic that makes your vision tunnel. I stepped into the hallway and the lights flickered in a way that felt like recognition, like the building had noticed my decision. The stairwell had 9 landings instead of 5. I know it sounds stupid to argue about landings, but I'd been in that stairwell 1,000 times. 5 stories. 5. You go down, you hit the 2nd floor, the 1st floor, the lobby. It's simple. This time it kept going. Down and down and down. The concrete steps looked the same. The metal railing cold under my hand, but the numbers on the little plaques by the doors didn't make sense. I passed a door marked 3, then another marked 3 again, then 2, then something that wasn't a number at all, just a smear like someone had tried to wipe it off. Every other apartment door on the landings was sealed from the inside, not boarded up, not taped. Sealed, like something had pressed itself against the metal and left a pattern. Tiny handprints covered the doors, layered over each other, some so small they looked like they belonged to toddlers. I tried not to look too long. My mind kept supplying details I didn't want. Some prints were darker, like they'd been left with dirty hands. Some were paler, like chalk. Some looked stretched, as if the fingers had dragged. When I finally reached what should have been the ground floor, the lobby was dark. The fluorescent lights were off. The mailboxes were just shapes in the shadows. And the front doors were gone. Not locked, not blocked by furniture, gone. Where the glass doors should have been was a brick wall, clean and solid, like it had always been that way. I ran my hands over it, feeling for seams, for anything that would explain it. The bricks were cold and real, the mortar rough against my fingertips. Behind me, the stairwell exhaled. I don't have a better way to describe it. The air shifted like something had sighed, and the smell of violet candy rolled over me, sweet and sick. I went back up because there was nowhere else to go. Last night was the end of whatever normal was left. I woke up on the floor of that narrow room behind the little door. I didn't remember walking there. I didn't remember opening it. I didn't even remember going to sleep. One moment I was in my mother's bed staring at the ceiling, and the next I was on that warm carpet, cheek pressed against it like it was a pillow. My clothes didn't fit right anymore. The sleeves bunched at my wrists. The collar sat wrong on my neck. My arms felt shorter, like the bones had compacted. When I pushed myself up, my hands looked too small for my body. My face felt loose, like the bones were sliding around under the skin. Not broken, just not settled. I touched my jaw and felt it shift slightly under my fingers. It was like my skull was trying to remember a different shape. In the corner of the room, there was a shape. At first, I thought it was a pile of clothes. Then it moved, and the movement was careful, deliberate, like someone who doesn't want to make noise. The room was dim, but not dark. I could see enough. It looked exactly like me at 9 years old. Not like a generic child. Like me. The same hairline, the same ears, the same thin shoulders. It was wearing the same pajamas from the day my brother died. I hadn't thought about those pajamas in years, but the pattern was burned into some part of me. Faded blue with little shapes on them. I remembered the way the fabric felt, too stiff from too many washes. The child turned its head and smiled. The smile was wrong. Not because it was wide or creepy, but because it had my adult teeth in its mouth. Too big. Too many. White and solid in a face that was supposed to still have gaps. I couldn't speak. My throat made a tight sound like a trapped cough. The child, that thing, looked at me like it knew exactly what I was thinking, like it had been waiting for me to wake up. Then it took a step forward, and the carpet under it looked like it moved, like the fibers leaned toward its feet. I ran. I don't remember getting down the stairs. I remember the feel of the doorknob in my hand, slick with sweat. I remember the hallway stretching longer and longer, the lights flickering faster like they were excited. I remember hearing small feet behind me, quick and light. And then another set of feet that sounded like mine but wrong, like wet slapping because the soles were getting softer and smaller. I remember my own breathing turning high and thin, and with every breath, the building breathed back. Somehow, I made it outside. I don't remember seeing the lobby doors. I don't remember the brick wall. I just remember cold air hitting my face and the night outside looking too open, like I'd escaped into a place with no ceiling. I got into my car and drove until the gas light came on. I didn't pick a direction. I just drove. I was afraid to stop because I thought if I stopped, I'd look in the rearview mirror and see that child in the back seat, smiling with my teeth. I checked into this motel under a fake name. The guy at the desk barely looked up. I don't think he would have noticed if I was bleeding or crying or missing an arm. He just slid the key across the counter and went back to whatever was on his screen. Now I'm here, trying to get this down while I still can. My hands are shrinking while I type. The fingers are shorter and chubbier now, like they belong to someone who hasn't finished growing. When I spread my hand on the desk, the knuckles look wrong. The skin looks too smooth in places and too tight in others. My voice cracked earlier when I whispered, "I'm sorry," and it came out sounding like a little kid trying to imitate an adult. The sound scared me so badly I covered my mouth with both hands. I could smell the violet candy on my breath, and that smell didn't come from the room. It came from me. The veins in my arms are dark again, and they're not just veins anymore. They look like something drawn under the skin with a blunt marker, branching in patterns that don't match human anatomy. The bumps under my ribs feel sharper tonight. I can feel new teeth moving behind my ribs, pushing, shifting, like something is building itself inside me piece by piece. I'm still me. For now, I can still type, I can still think in full sentences, even if my thoughts keep slipping into that other voice when I'm not paying attention. But the building is calling me back. That's not a metaphor. I can hear it. The motel walls are thin, and beyond them I can hear breathing. Slow, steady, patient. It's getting louder, like it's closer than it should be. Like it followed me here the way a smell follows you on your clothes. When I hold my breath, it holds its breath too. When I start again, it starts again, like a reminder that we're still connected. It wants me to take his place so the accident can be fixed. That's the thought that keeps appearing in my head like it's being placed there. The accident, the thing I never told anyone because there was nothing to say that could make it better. A moment of pushing and anger, and the stupid belief that nothing truly bad can happen in 1 second. I was a kid, but I wasn't innocent. I can still remember the sound and the way the world went silent afterward, like even the air didn't know what to do. My mom knew. She must have. She must have carried that knowledge in this apartment all these years, letting it grow into something that lived behind a door at the end of the hallway. She tried to keep it shut. She tried to keep it contained. She made me promise because she was too tired to keep fighting it alone. If you still have parents, don't ever go back to their place after they're gone. Not right away, not when you're exhausted and numb and looking for a way to feel in control again. And if there's something heavy in your past, something you never told anyone because you were ashamed or afraid, don't pretend it's buried just because years have passed. Sometimes it isn't buried. Sometimes it's been waiting in the same spot the whole time, breathing through the walls, learning your rhythm. I have to post this now. My fingers barely reach the keys anymore. The nails keep thickening as I type. The skin around my knuckles looks puffy, like it's trying to reshape itself. The smell is stronger, sweet, and rotten, and it's coming off my body in waves. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, little brother. The neon sign outside just flashed exactly in time with my heartbeat, like it's syncing up with me the way the building does. Pink light, then dark, then pink again. And every time it flashes, I feel a pull in my chest, like a string tightening. I think I'm going back tonight.